Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage the President of the National Committee on U.S. China Relations, Mr. Steve Orlins.
Secretary Kissinger and Blumenthal, Ambassadors Zhang, Hills, and Sun, Chairman Watson, President Iger, distinguished guests and friends. Steve Jobs, a visionary whose sad death 12 days ago made headlines around the world, said, "Here's to the one who see things differently. They are not fond of rules. They push the human race forward, and while some may see them as the crazy ones, we seek genius, because the ones who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do." 45 years ago, 12 visionaries founded the National Committee on U.S. China Relations in the belief that the United States should engage with the People's Republic of China and that Americans should learn to talk about China in a balanced, nonpartisan way. 1966 was an extraordinary time, a crazy time, some may say, to establish this organization. The United States was deeply divided over the war in Vietnam. China had just entered the turmoil of the Cultural Revolution. The two countries had not spoken in 17 years. Anti-American rhetoric was a staple of Chinese propaganda, and anti-China sentiments a regular feature of the political discourse in the United States. Onto this scene burst the National Committee with a vision for open and informed dialogue about China. Because of this vision and the devoted work of those visionaries, the world did indeed change. 6 years later, after Secretary Kissinger's secret visit to China, the committee hosted the Chinese ping pong team on their historic visit to the United States and helped change how Americans viewed China. Other exchanges followed, the dialogue grew, and our countries drew closer. The committee achieved the vision of its founders. It could have said, "That's enough." But the committee pushed its mission further, running more programs, opening more doors, and in 1979, the United States and the People's Republic of China established diplomatic relations. The National Committee helped host Deng Xiaoping on his seminal visit to this country, and our predecessors could have declared victory. They could have said, "That's enough." A decade later, we hosted then-Mayor, soon-to-be Premier Zhu Rongji on his visit to America after the tragic events of June 4th, 1989, in a very dark time. We helped the countries reestablish contact. Again, our predecessors could have said, "That's enough." 45 years have passed since our founding, and there are now myriad government, business, political, educational, and personal ties between our countries. The National Committee has been part of it all. 786 exchanges with 8,503 participants. Public programming witnessed in person by tens of thousands, and over the internet and over the air by hundreds of millions. We have achieved the vision of our founders. Is it time for us to say, "That's enough"? Clearly, it isn't. Anti-China rhetoric remains part of our political and public discourse. And in China, too many believe that U.S. policy seeks to contain China's rise. A headline in this morning's Wall Street Journal tells the story. It reads, "One loser in U.S. presidential polling, China." In fact, one of the major Republican candidates for president says he sees eye to eye on China with a man who happened to have owned the very establishment in which we sit tonight and who contemplated a run for the White House himself. After President Obama hosted President Hu at a state dinner, that man said, minus the expletives, "You don't give dinner to the enemy. I would have sent them to McDonald's and then home." But even more troubling can be our elected leaders who assert that China is the primary cause of job loss in America, rather than increases in productivity, automation, and technological innovation. Worse yet, they advocate legislation that reminds me of the Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act of 1930. For those of you who haven't studied American history, that act raised tariffs on 20,000 imported goods and sent the world spiraling into the Great Depression. As I think about the challenges that lie ahead, I recognize, as all of you do, that our relationship with China will determine the world we leave to our children. I think of the devoted staff at the National Committee who work every day, long hours, in pursuit of our mission. I think about Jan Barris, who has devoted 40 years to this organization. I think about Dr. Kissinger, our chair, Carla Hills, and Vice Chair, Hank Greenberg, who have worked throughout their lives to strengthen the U.S. China relationship. And tonight, I think about all of you in this room, because your contributions have allowed the National Committee to raise more than in any single event in our 45-year history. I haven't told you how much yet. Tonight, I'm thrilled to announce that we have raised in excess of $1.6 million. I want to particularly thank our friends at Chevron, Disney, and CV Star. I also want to recognize Diana Rogaman. Where is Diana? If you haven't heard, there she is, who has done a spectacular job in putting together this evening. The money we raise here, combined with foundation and government support, allows us to create the amazing array of innovative programs that we run. Just in the last 13 months, we've hosted events for President Hu Jintao, Premier Wen Jiabao, and Foreign Minister Yang Jiechi. We convened 4 Track 2 dialogues, 2 on human rights and rule of law, 1 on strategic issues, and a 4th on economic issues. We've introduced Chinese diplomats to American history and culture. We've welcomed teachers from China and sent Americans to teach there. We've accompanied congressional member and staff delegations to China. And these are just a portion of our programs. Looking ahead, in just the next 8 weeks, we will convene the 10th anniversary of our Young Leaders Forum in Xi'an, lead a congressional staff delegation to China, host a delegation from China's Ministry of Education, send a group of environmental law professionals to China, and convene 4 public programs. Finally, on November 16th, a month from last night, in front of thousands of Americans in 50 venues across the country, we will hold our 5th annual China Town Hall. Our founders would be proud of what we have accomplished. They would be proud that we have been crazy enough to believe that we can change the world, and in our own way, we have and we will. Let me close my remarks with a quotation from Chairman Mao, in fact. First, I'll do it in Chinese for those of you who don't. 毛主席说，我们的同志在困难的时候，要看到成绩，要看到光明，要提高我们的勇气。Which, for the non-Chinese speaking portion, in times of difficulty, we must not lose sight of our achievements. We must see the bright future, and we must pluck up our courage. These are difficult times, so I thank each and every one of you for your support tonight. Speaking of support, I want to recognize a friend who has just arrived from Beijing. The artwork, which you see over there, to be given to our honorees tonight, was created by China's most famous sculptor, the president of the China Academy of Sculpture. His award-winning work has been on display in over 10 countries and is permanently featured in the Nanjing Museum. Please join me in welcoming and thanking Wu Weishan. I would just, here he is. This is a Han Dynasty horse and is going to be given to the chairman of Chevron. It represents strength. And this is 2 children playing hide and seek, and of course will be given to the president of Disney. But Mr. Wu, thank you. To close this portion of the program, I'd like to invite a few people who've played an important role in U.S. China relations and with the committee to join me on stage for a toast. Stephen Cecil Thomas, the son of Cecil Thomas, one of the founders and the first executive director of the committee. Secretary Mike Blumenthal, former Secretary of the Treasury and chair of the National Committee on U.S. China Relations in 1972. Ambassador Nick Platt, one of Nixon's China boys, who was on the president's 1972 trip to China. The Honorable Herb Hansel, my first boss, the legal advisor at the State Department when we established diplomatic relations and the board member of the committee. Ambassador Doug Paul, a former senior director of the National Security Council for Asia and a board member of the National Committee. Ambassador Jeff Bader, another former senior director of the National Security Council for Asia and a committee board member. Professor Mike Lampton, former president of the National Committee. Is Jim sad? No. Okay. Skip that one. Ambassador Carla Hills, the former United States Trade Representative and Chair of the National Committee. Ambassador Zhang Yesui, the Ambassador of the People's Republic of China to the United States. Ambassador Sun Guoxiang, Consul General of the People's Republic of China in New York. Vice President Jan Barris, the backbone of the National Committee. And to lead us in the toast, the man who needs no introduction, a Nobel Prize winner, and the 56th Secretary of State of the United States, Dr. Henry Kissinger. Woo.
At a moment when there is so much commentary in the United States about our divisions and our domestic problems, it is important to remember that there is at least one element of continuity. 8 American administrations since the first visit to China have pursued a policy of cooperation and based on the consciousness that the future of the world depends importantly on the relationship between China and the United States. They've performed the task of leaders of taking their society from where it is to where it has not yet been. So I'd like to propose a toast to all those whose faith and commitment on both sides of the Pacific have created a situation in which China and the United States can speak of a community of interests in shaping a world of peace and security. Where is he? So let me propose a toast to the National Committee and to all those whose commitment and dedication have brought us to this point and will take us to an even greater future.
Hear, hear. Well done.